Hello everyone, this is Stephen Balch, your instructor for Business Communications at Ozarka College. What I'd like to do today is give you a little bit of feedback on the Chapter 8 assignment and Project 1 that I graded earlier this week. And then I'm also going to give you a little bit of feedback on the midterm exam. And then I'm going to tell you what we've got coming up due for our next set of chapter activities for chapters 13 and 14. So the first thing is, like I said, I did finish grading the chapter 8 assignment in project 1 earlier this week. Hopefully you've already gone in and looked at your grades for those activities and read the grading comments. If you haven't done that, please go ahead and do that as soon as you can and let me know if you have any questions. Most of you did well on the chapter 8 assignment. And also on the project, there were a few things that I'm going to point out in just a minute on the project. But overall, most of you did well. And like I always tell you, I really appreciate the time and effort you're putting into the class. So keep up the good work on that. Now, on the project, there were a couple things I need to point out. Most of you did a really good job with the research that you did in completing that project, that persuasive letter. If you'll remember, that's what Project 1 was. And most of you did a good job with using your own words and ideas, and your message was persuasive. Most of you used correct grammar and spelling. There were a few errors, like capitalization errors and punctuation and spelling and grammar that I had to count points off for. But overall, most of you did pretty well on that. Just as a reminder, when you're completing a business document like a letter, you always want to run the spelling and grammar check before you actually submit it for a grade. You want to make sure that you correct any errors on your document before you submit it. Of course, you would also do the same thing before you send out a letter in a business, or send out any kind of communication. You always want to check all of your, run the spelling and grammar check and make sure you correct all those errors before you send out that document. Okay, and we actually had a discussion, a course discussion about that just in the last couple of weeks. So just like I said, most of you did well on that. I think some one or two of you just kind of ran out of time to do that. You kind of waited too late to get started, and so you just didn't have time to go back and correct your errors. There were also a few minor formatting problems that some of you had. Now, those of you that used the template that I provided didn't really have any problems with the formatting, because the formatting was already part of the template. It was already done. All you had to do is type in your your specific information. But those of you that used a different template did not have all the correct formatting. There were a few minor formatting issues there that I had to count points off for. Other than that, like I said, those were really the main issues there. But like I said, overall, most of you did well on the project. So we will have some more projects as we go through the semester. For example, we will also do a resume project and a cover letter project. And also towards the end of the semester, you'll get a chance to kind of learn some interviewing skills. I will actually interview you for a kind of a mock interview for a job, kind of towards the end of the semester, so you can kind of build your skill in that area as well. Okay, all right. So just let me know if you have any questions about your grades on the project in Chapter 8. The other thing that we just did recently was the midterm exam, and most of you did well on that. And like I said, I always appreciate your time and effort, your hard work that you're putting in. So keep up the good work on that. Now, the midterm exam, I have opened it up for review purposes. So you can go back in and look at what you missed and study those concepts for the final exam, because we will kind of revisit a lot of those concepts on the final exam. Okay. All right. Just let me know if you have questions about that. All right. So that brings us to what we've got coming up due next. Now, you'll notice on the activities page in MyOzarka, right now we're kind of at the end of, or towards the end of week 8 of the semester. And of course, we just did our midterm exam. We don't have anything else due this week. We don't actually even have anything due next week, but you should be working on the next set of activities for chapters 13 and 14, which are due early the following week, specifically Monday, October 20th. So you've got about 11 days to be working on chapters 13 and 14. Now, chapter 13 covers preparation of resumes and application letters, which is very important in business. Obviously, there's kind of two main purposes of learning about resumes and application letters when you're going into a business field. For one thing, obviously, you want to be able to get a good job once you graduate from here, and in order to do that effectively, you need to have a good resume. You need to prepare a good resume and application letter. But also, when you actually start your career in business, at some point in your career in business, you may have to go through resumes to fill a position in your business. You may be in a supervisory role or a management role where you actually are on the other end of the communication as far as resumes and application letters. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. And then chapter 13 again, resumes and application letters. So in chapter 13, you're going to learn about the various types of resumes, parts of a resume, and how to prepare a resume for either print or electronic distribution. All right. And then in chapter 14, we're going to cover the other aspect of, what you do after the resume and application letter, which in most cases, if it's effective, you should get an interview. And so chapter 14 is going to cover the interviewing for a job and also preparing employment messages. So in chapter 14, you're going to learn about the types of employment interviews, ways to prepare for an interview, how to conduct a successful interview, how to prepare various employment messages, such as application forms, follow-up messages, thank you messages, etc. All right? So those chapters 13 and 14 are really going to prepare you for the projects 2 and 3, which will involve you actually creating a resume for yourself and an application letter for a job that you would like to obtain. Okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. And then the last project, again, that we'll do this semester will be a mock interview. Okay? All right. Let's see. And then the only other thing I need to tell you about is I did post midterm grades earlier this week. Most of you, I'm sure, have gone in and looked at your grade, your midterm grade. It shouldn't be a surprise to you. It's just going to be whatever your percentage grade was, the equivalent letter grade to that, according to the grading scale that's on the syllabus. And so it shouldn't be a surprise, but if it is, let me know. Now, one thing I do need to point out that some students may ask about is I do not round up your grade at midterm. So even if you have like an 89.9%, it's going to be a B at midterm. Now, your final course grade, I most likely will look at rounding up if that's something that's that I feel like is needed at the end of the semester. So I'm more likely to do that at the end, but at midterm, I usually do not round up. So if you're wondering about that, that's kind of my method for that. All right. So be working on chapters 13 and 14. Also be thinking about, go ahead and you probably need to go ahead and look at the Project 2 um, uh, instructions for the resume and application letter right here under week 12. I know it's still a few weeks away, but since we're covering resumes and application letters in chapter 13, it would be a good idea to go ahead and open up those projects, start looking at those, and kind of preparing yourself, kind of create a plan for how you're going to approach the resume creation and application letter creation. You probably need to go ahead and start looking at job postings to see which job, which specific position you're going to apply for with your application letter. Okay, so definitely go ahead and start looking at that. And if you have questions as you're working through that and looking at it, just let me know if you have any questions about it. And that's really all I have for you for today. So be working on those things. Like I said, let me know if you have questions. Enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you.